Yes, sir. It's your boy Snake Eye Bomb First TV checking in. Salute to the military for dropping the bombs on that like button before we even get lit. If you're new to the channel, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment. I get back with all comments. Florence Massacre, y'all. Let's get right into it. Terrence Caraway, 52-year-old veteran officer, was killed in the line of duty, y'all. 7 officers were shot in total. 1 fatally. Mr. Terrence Caraway. They had a memorial for him at First Baptist Church on Thursday in Florence, about 24 hours after he was killed. Let's get right into it. Fred Hopkins is the shooter. He was a disbarred attorney. His wife is a well-known attorney in Florence, South Carolina. They were there to serve a search warrant on his 27-year-old son for like a sexual assault, a sexual battery case. He was perched like a sniper. He was a military veteran. He was perched like a sniper with military gun, opened fire on the officer, and the rest is history. R.I.P. to Terrence Caraway. I have a whole bunch of videos for y'all so y'all can piece the case together. Fred Hopkins is the shooter. Terrence Caraway is the 52-year-old veteran officer of 30 years who was killed, y'all. R.I.P. to him. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. The video's up next. Yes, sir.
A quiet procession today honoring a fallen officer.
He was a giant of a man, but he was the proverbial gentle giant, and I loved him.
Emotions raw, remembering Sergeant Terrence Caraway, killed in yesterday's shootout in Florence, South Carolina.
I'm not sure that knowing a why is very reassuring in any way.
Because you lost a friend.
Because you lost a friend.
6 other officers wounded, 2 critically, in what is now being investigated as a possible ambush. Residents in this quiet community shaken.
Vehicles started racing towards our house, and they were going so fast that I ran back inside.
It happened after police went to this home with a search warrant. According to law enforcement, the 27-year-old man inside, the target of a sexual assault investigation. Instead, his father, 74-year-old Frederick Hopkins, met them, allegedly armed with a high-powered rifle. 4 foster children were also in the home and hiding during the shootout. Byron Black has known Mr. Hopkins for years.
He knew they was coming. You know what I'm saying? He knew how to prepare himself for that. And he had military rifles. He was in Vietnam.
Tonight, the alleged gunman is in custody, but the sheriff says he is yet to be charged.
The South Carolina community gathered to grieve and lean on each other last night after investigators say a man opened fire, killing an officer and wounding 6 others. Law enforcement officers lined the streets to watch the procession for Florence Police Sergeant Terrence Caraway as he was escorted back to Florence. Sergeant Caraway will be honored by the city of Florence with a public viewing on Monday. As for the suspected gunman, Frederick Hopkins, he is still in the hospital for an injury he got after falling during the 2-hour standoff. Now, since he is in the hospital, he's not been charged. Hopkins is a disabled Vietnam veteran who had been disbarred as a lawyer decades ago. According to Facebook posts from Hopkins, he started shooting competitively around the same time he was disbarred.
More than 100 officers rushing to help their own.
We have an officer down at this time,
with authorities declaring an active shooter situation.
The suspect was still firing.
The scene inside this Florence County, South Carolina neighborhood, where a nearby school was immediately locked down and residents asked to stay away.
It's really terrifying to just sit here and just wait.
The officers were initially there to serve a search warrant when the suspect inside a home with children refused to surrender and started shooting. The standoff lasting for 2 hours and ending with 7 officers shot. One of them later died at the hospital.
Today we lost a good friend of mine, an officer that I've known for 30 years. Pray for these officers and their speedy recovery.
The officer killed has been identified as Terrence Caraway, who just celebrated his 30th year on the force.
Pray for the family who lost the bravest police officer that I have ever known.
According to the Associated Press, authorities are identifying the suspect as 74-year-old Frederick Hopkins. We're told the suspect eventually surrendered after speaking with a negotiator, and the children he held hostage are all now safe. Elizabeth Herr, ABC News.
We're getting some breaking news out of Florence, South Carolina, where a gunman ambushed police officers, leaving one dead. Let's get straight to David Begnaud. David, what more can you tell us? We know you were getting information that was coming into you the last hour when we spoke.
So, Vlad, we went from having pretty much no information an hour ago to having a whole lot of information. This is a major story. Think about it. When was the last time you heard about 7 law enforcement officers being shot at one time in the United States of America? It happened here in Florence County, South Carolina. It's a community of about 37,000 people. We are in an extremely affluent neighborhood. The crime scene is about 100 yards, give or take, behind me. Let me walk you through some of what we were just told. The shooter, according to a senior law enforcement official with direct knowledge of the investigation, the shooter is an elderly man by the name of Fred Hopkins. Mr. Hopkins is the man, the father of the home. His wife is a well-known attorney in the area. We're told Mr. Hopkins is also an attorney, but no longer practices law. What we're told is that officials showed up at this house yesterday afternoon on or about 4 o'clock Eastern with a search warrant. They knocked on the door. They had permission to break down the door if they wanted, but I'm told by the senior law enforcement official they didn't want to do that. So they knocked on the door. There were 5 sheriff's deputies standing in the front yard. As they knocked on the door waiting for someone to answer, the gunman opened fire. Mr. Hopkins, according to our law enforcement official, was perched like a sniper. He opened fire on the deputies in the front yard. He hit 3 of them, and I want to walk you through exactly what we were told. If we can step, Marshall, you can get the look. So just beyond these police officers, there's a blue unmarked vehicle. That blue unmarked car is probably 75 yards from the shooter's home. At that car is where one of the officers was shot. I'm told he didn't get more than 2 feet in front of his vehicle before he went down due to a bullet. If you go to the right-hand side, you're going to see a white police car with police written on the back. That is where Terrence Caraway, a Florence, South Carolina police officer who was responding to the call of officers down, he parked his car probably 30, I'd say 35 yards from the home, and he was shot through the vehicle, we're told. The gunman fired into the police car and shot Officer Caraway as he was getting out of the vehicle. There was another officer, we're told, who was shot in his vehicle because the gunman fired a shot into the vehicle. The officers were told in total you had 3 of the sheriff's deputies shot in the front yard, and then you had 4 other Florence police officers who were shot as they responded to a call for backup. There's going to be a news conference happening sometime within the next hour. I can tell you from talking to residents in the neighborhood, some people call the house behind me a problem house. In fact, the senior law enforcement official who we've spoken to says police have been here dozens of times. We're trying to figure out exactly how many times, but dozens is the word that was used. We're told that at the home there were several foster children, and we're told that as of this morning, Child Protective Services has removed those kids from the home as an investigation into exactly what happened continues. That's what we have for you now. The news conference should start, give or take, in about an hour. We'll try and take it live here on CBSN. But, of course, you'll get the very latest at cbsnews.com.
And, David, before we let you go, how are those officers who were wounded? How are they doing?
So, good question. I meant to say, of the officers who were wounded, the sheriff's deputies who were the first to respond, I specifically said, how are they? And the law enforcement official told me, I'm not sure, they're in really bad shape. Of the Florence City police officers who were the ones responding to the call for backup, the second wave to come in and get shot, I'm told that they will likely be okay. But of course, one of them, Mr. Caraway, died right near his vehicle yesterday. He had been with the department for more than 30 years.
Yeah, the press conference yesterday, there were, police chief was just almost in tears, talking about not only did he lose a fine police officer, but also a good friend that he had known for 30 years.
Yeah, you go through your job doing that job for 30 years, and your heart breaks. Yeah. Absolutely. David, as always, we appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
You bet.